Dan Jarvis, Labour MP for Barnsley Central. I've been trying to get a sit down with you for ages, so thank you for finally succumbing. You are unusual. You were an officer in the British Army. You served in Northern Ireland, in Kosovo, in Sierra Leone, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Why on earth are you now a Labour MP?
Well, I believe in public service. I also believe in the importance of the team, of getting difficult things done by working with others. That was the ethos of my time in the army, getting difficult things done. It's the same in politics. You have to work with other people. And the basic essence of being a member of an MP for the Labour Party is that you believe in the collective. You believe that by working together, you can achieve more than you can working alone. So I know many people were very surprised that I left the parachute regiment and became a Labour MP. But for me, the golden thread that runs through it all is public service, is doing something important to make a difference to other people.
And we're going to talk for most of this interview about what it is like to serve our country. First of all, I just want to ask you about what it's like being a single parent, because tragedy struck your family in 2010 and suddenly you're a single parent.
I think being a single parent is the hardest job in the world. When previously there were two of you doing all of the jobs, all of the things that have to be done every single day, and then all of a sudden it's just you. And that daily routine, getting the kids ready for school in the morning, getting them up, giving them breakfast, getting the school uniform, doing the school run, it is epic when you're on your own. So that's hard. And of course, there's no resilience or insurance policy within the household. If previously, if one of you had been unwell, the other one could kind of sort of take the strain. But if it's just you, it's all on you. So it's an incredibly difficult job. There are amazing single parents around the country who are coping and doing the very best that they can. But, I have to confess it was hard going.
Okay, so let's talk about your journey. You leave comprehensive school, but you attend Sandhurst for your training, for your officer training. Sandhurst is famously filled mostly by people who went to private school. Is that a problem that most people at Sandhurst went to private school and are not from your background?
Well, I think things are a bit better now, but certainly when I went there, I felt very out of place. I remember walking up through the doors of this incredibly grand building, and my comprehensive school that I'd been to, it was a good school, but it didn't prepare me to go to a place like Sandhurst. And I was surrounded by people who were more confident than I was because of the nature of their public school background. I remember being told that the suit that I'd bought, which I thought was a very smart suit from Marks and Spencer's, if I can say that, I was told very early on that it just wasn't good enough, it wasn't smart enough, and I needed to go and get another suit, and that my shoes weren't the right sort of shoes. And you're stood in a corridor when you get there with other people who, they've got very expensive pinstripe suits and really posh sort of tweed jackets, and you kind of look around and you think, well, is this a place for me? And is this somewhere that I can be successful in? But I think in a funny way, that only made me more determined to do the very best that I could. So I think it was a bit of a sink or swim moment. You either kind of make the best of it and get on with it, or you kind of walk away and leave it behind. And my philosophy was get your head down, work hard and make a success of it. And that's what I tried to do.
And I was reading about some of the training practices at Sandhurst, and you write about something called milling, which I had never heard of, which I was reading open-mouthed. Just explain what happens.
Well, milling comes a bit later. So milling is something that is unique to the parachute regiment. It's basically boxing, where you are pitted against somebody else and you basically have to box with them, but in a very aggressive and violent way for a period of time. So it's not pleasant, but it is designed to test your mettle, because if you're joining the parachute regiment, if you're going to be going into the most difficult and challenging situations, the army needs to know that you've got the mettle to cope with those kind of situations. So it's not a nice thing to do. It's pretty unpleasant, and it's a hard thing to do, but it is an important part of the training.
So you and another, like kick the insert word out of each other.
Yeah, pretty much. And basically that's designed to test whether if you get knocked down, and I did get knocked down on occasions, are you going to get back up? And that is a good test of your determination. As I say, it is not pretty, and some people would not be especially approving of it as a training technique. But if you're going to be in the paras, the system needs to know that you can cope with that violence and that pressure. So that's why we did it, and that's why it's done to this day.
Wow. This is what you said about Iraq. You said that it's impossible not to conclude that it was a grave error. Now, you have a debate in Parliament. Tell me what that debate in Parliament is designed to achieve.
Well, my debate in Parliament isn't to debate the rights and wrongs of the war. It's absolutely legitimate that people have a view about whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing. But the purpose of my debate solely is to commemorate the service and the sacrifice of those very brave men and women who stepped forward in good faith to serve in our armed forces and didn't come back. So this 20th anniversary milestone, I think, provides an important opportunity to commemorate them and their service, to ensure that they are not forgotten. And as I say, regardless of the rights or wrongs of the conflict, I think it is very important that we don't lose sight of the fact that British servicemen and women behaved and conducted themselves with extraordinary professionalism under very difficult circumstances. And my debate will seek to ensure that that is remembered.
Do you have an idea or a picture in your mind about how we might remember?
Well, I think it's just important that we don't forget about the service and the sacrifice. This will be a difficult moment for the families. They will still be grieving their loved ones. And whilst I completely understand why some people want to take the opportunity to get into the detail of whether it was the right thing or whether it was the wrong thing, I understand all of that. But what I want to do is just make sure that collectively in Parliament, on a cross-party basis, we come together and say, regardless of the rights or the wrongs of that particular conflict, we will ensure that we never forget the service and the sacrifice of those who laid down their lives.
When you were in Afghanistan, having read your book, I think this is the most difficult situation that you found yourself in throughout your years of service. There was a moment where you feared that you were going to be captured by the Taliban. And you momentarily wondered if you would shoot yourself rather than be taken captive. Just saying that is quite chilling, actually. Talk me through that. What was going through your mind?
The deployment to Afghanistan was extraordinarily difficult for lots of different reasons. And there were many moments of profound uncertainty and doubt. There was doubt in my mind about whether I should have even been there in the first place. And on a daily basis, you were grappling with the challenge of trying to keep your soldiers alive. That's primarily what I was there to do, to keep my soldiers alive. And throughout the duration of the deployment, there were many, many difficult and challenging moments. The one you refer to in particular was a moment where I found myself alone in the desert, in the dark. And having been there for a number of months, I knew that I was worn down and fatigued by the whole process of having to make these difficult judgments every single day. And the burden of being the boss, when you're in command of your company, it's all on you. You have to make the decisions, and they are life and death decisions that you're taking every day. And I just remember a moment of profound difficulty where all of a sudden I was on my own. I'd got split up from the rest of my company in the dark. And I just had this moment where I thought, well, there is a real risk that I could get captured. I'm not going to get captured, because being captured by the Taliban is not something that you wanted to happen. So your tired, addled mind is going through all the different scenarios, the sort of what if this happens, what if that happens? And in that moment, I just made this judgment that I was somehow going to find a way to make sure that I wasn't captured. And that was a very, very difficult moment, which I've thought about many times subsequently. But I think it just exemplifies the sort of the difficulties and the pressures that people are put under those very difficult circumstances.
Terrifying to listen to that. I just want to clarify, just because you said something and I just want to put on the record, because I think you'll thank me for it, you said, I even questioned whether I should be there. That was not because of the nature of the operation, wasn't it? That was just because, obviously, it's difficult for anybody to leave their families.
Yes. That's absolutely right. So it wasn't about the importance of the mission in itself, which I think was the right thing to do. It's just that I was there at what was a very challenging time for myself and my family, and I was constantly racked with doubt about whether I should be in Afghanistan with my company and my soldiers, or whether I should have been at home with my family.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about politics. I don't think you would contest me saying that Labour has a problem, has had a problem with its connection with working class voters. Somebody with your background, I mean, surely you could be the answer. And let me tell you, when you first got selected as a candidate in Barnsley, and in the tea rooms, like me and my colleague would say, oh my gosh, have you seen, we've got like some former army officer that is going to be a Labour MP. I mean, he's got to be the next leader. Would you ever contemplate it, Dan, leading your party?
Well, let me firstly just pick up on your important point about the connection to working class voters. I mean, throughout its history, the Labour Party has had this challenge of being able to talk to people in Hampstead, whilst at the same time being able to talk to people in Hull. Now, I'm extremely proud to be a Yorkshire MP and to be the MP for Barnsley Central. So you can probably guess where I sit in terms of the kind of the Hampstead versus the Hull debate. And I think whilst things are going pretty well for us, you know, we're in a good position in the polls, nobody's remotely complacent about the challenge that the Labour Party still faces to cross the line and to get into government. And an incredibly important part of that is being able to talk to voters and firstly listen and then talk to voters in what sometimes people refer to as the red wall seats. And I think that we always need to make sure that as a party, nobody can ever say or think that we are a party of people who live in London. And I live in South Yorkshire. I'm very proud to live in Barnsley. And my perspective on politics on the world is through the prism of my constituents and my constituency. So I try and make sure that I'm their voice in Parliament, but also their voice in terms of an important debate about the Labour Party and developing a policy agenda that speaks to the challenges that working people face, not just in my part of the world, but right around the country. So I'm not remotely complacent about the sort of the challenge we face, but we need to make sure that in the months and the sort of the years to come, that people in Hull, as well as people in Hampstead, look at us as the people who've got the analysis and understand the challenges of their daily lives and are best placed to serve them in government.
Would you ever rule out leading your party one day?
Well, it's not something that I give a huge amount of thought to. I mean, I'm very fortunate in the sense that as well as having life experience outside of politics, I was also for 4 years, somewhat eccentrically, because many people in my party didn't want me to do it, I was the mayor of South Yorkshire. Now, that's given me a bit of a taste of what it's like to be in government. And it's not easy. There are all sorts of challenges and frictions that you encounter every day. So not for one moment do I underestimate the challenges of being in the leadership role and being in government. But I actually think that we've got an exceptional leader in Keir Starmer. Look at the journey and look at the transformation. You know what it was like back in 2019.
All right.
We've come a long way, and he's done a fantastic job in getting us to where we are now.
That's the first time we heard Dan the politician. But what I loved so much about that is, Dan, you have the most extraordinary life story. And I'm incredibly grateful, actually, that you have shared it with us. Dan Jarvis, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gloria.